Are you interested in being a better husband, a better father, and a better man at work? You are in the right place. Welcome to Rock Solid Men, where we're becoming better men led by the God who created us. I'm Chad Starfelt, and I'm your host. Join me for a weekly dose of truth as we seek to become better men of God. And I'm so glad you're tuning in for another episode of Rock Solid Men. Today, part 2 of how to lead your family well. Today, we're focusing on leading your children. Did you hear in the news this week the 2 kayakers who were almost swallowed up by a whale? The video is just wild. These 2 whale watchers were in California, and they got more than the full experience when their kayak was capsized by a breaching humpback whale. Some amazing footage from some bystanders nearby, some witnesses. The kayak is thrust into the air as the whale breaches the surface with his mouth wide open. One of the ladies in the kayak, it was a 2-person kayak, thought, "Oh my, it's getting closer, it's getting closer." And then she reports, all of a sudden we were lifted up and we were thrown into the water. Although the footage from the bystanders makes it look like they're actually swallowed up in the whale's mouth, one of the ladies said the kayak just overturned and they were thrown into the water. Both women escaped unharmed and were assisted back to shore by other kayakers and paddle boarders. I thought this was a great way to start this episode because when we get too close to danger, it can cause trouble. When we allow our kids to get too close to danger, it can cause some major problems. Today, we're going to talk about 3 parts of leading your children well. 1, guarding their social media use. Number 2, your kids will follow what's important to you. And number 3, your kids are not just your wife's responsibility. Number 1, guarding your children's social media use. Obviously, this changes a lot as they get older and older, but I would guess for most of you, I might be encouraging you to be a little bit more on the guarding side than you might be used to. First, I encourage you to have access codes to all of your kids' phone apps, social media accounts, their YouTube account, anything like that. I strongly encourage you to have access to make it clear that you are giving them accountability. We all need accountability. You need accountability. I need accountability. And we as parents help our kids be responsible when we provide that accountability. I was thinking about just a few weeks ago how when we first were parenting, we thought our kids are never going to have TV in their room. They're never going to have their own TV. I don't know about you, but I did not grow up with a TV in my room. And those kids who did, it just seemed like many of them were just more separated maybe from their family. And then it hit me a couple weeks ago as I was looking through my daughter's YouTube use and thinking, interesting. I have basically allowed my kids to have TV in their room without me realizing it. Those smartphones, those iPads, those tablets are basically taking TV and so much more into their room and watching it and consuming it privately. So I encourage you to maybe be more protective even than I was in allowing your kids to have their smart device in separate rooms away from you, depending again on their age. We always have reviewed our kids' YouTube use, and every device, every app has some level of restrictions you can add to YouTube, or you can add to their Safari or their
Internet Explorer, and I encourage you to do that. I have restrictions on my kids. Again, my kids are 20, 18, and 14, and I had restrictions on my kids' use and controls on what they could see all the way through high school, all the way through graduation of high school. Obviously, once they move out of the house, once they go off to college, maybe it's that time to really release them of some of those controls. But what it does is it keeps them sensitized. Kids who watch and consume and view everything and everything from the age of 8 and 10 and 12, they just have to view more and more and more extreme things, hear more and more extreme things in order to please that appetite. But when they are restricted from those things, and you might get some pushback, they are more sensitive to it, and they are more passionate themselves as believing it is a dangerous place to go. So I view where my kids have been, even with restrictions, on YouTube. And a while back, I was viewing where one of my kids had gone, and they had watched a bunch of video clips of a show we had banned in our family. You know, it was on YouTube, and they were just looking at a lot of clips from that show. And so then I was able to talk with that child and just to remind that child why we had decided we weren't going to watch that show, and why that child wasn't going to be watching that show on YouTube as well. We also have decided as a family, as parents, that our kids aren't going to have TikTok. Again, obviously, once they're out of the house, that's a little bit more out of our control and to their discretion. But as long as they're in our house, under our roof, we don't have TikTok. There's just way too much inappropriate things on there. So when I saw that one of my children had viewed some videos of some TikTok videos, yes, kids upload TikTok videos to YouTube, I said, you already know that TikTok is not allowed in our house, and so there's a problem that you are watching these. And that child completely understood. Also, we found something that that child had been searching for on YouTube, just needed to learn about, wanted to learn about. And it made me think back to 6th or 7th grade when somebody called me a virgin. And I didn't know what a virgin was. And I had to go to the dictionary and look it up in order to figure out what a virgin was. But you know what? A dictionary is a good, reliable source for that kind of information. YouTube is not a good source for anything and everything your kids want to learn about. And so it provided an opportunity for us to chat with that child and speak about going to good sources. And we understand that they may not want to ask us everything, but getting reliable information and not just searching YouTube and whatever pops up. When that child got a new phone, Disney, the Disney network, not just the channel, but all under Disney's ownership, was free on that phone for 6 months. But we said, no, you're not going to sign up for that. She had to do a special sign up, or that child had to do a special sign up in order to get access to that. And we encouraged them not to, because basically we didn't want that child consuming hours and hours and hours of TV in their room without us knowing. We watch plenty of TV. We do not have cable. We still watch plenty of TV, and we don't need more of it. Again, I strongly encourage you to have internet blockers on your kids' smart devices. I strongly encourage you to have them have restrictions on YouTube and other things like that. There are programs and services that can cover all of their device, everything, instead of trying to manage everything, every app individually. And that is very, very helpful. Again, students, kids, they're too young to have good discernment. And there is just way too much accessibility to way too inappropriate of material on the internet and through those apps. If they're old enough to have Instagram or Facebook or Pinterest, and you have allowed them to have those things, I encourage you to be on those platforms as well, and make sure you have friended them, and make sure you look at their posts on those accounts very often. Not to be a complete police and harp on anything they put on there, but really to gauge their emotional well-being. Many kids will post things on those accounts when they are struggling, and when they are emotional, when they are disappointed about a friendship or a hurt from a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And that is great to be able to, it's important to be able to see those things quickly and see what they're posting, and then gently bring up the topic with your child. Boundaries are important. Obviously, the younger they are, the less screen time they should be allowed per day. The older they get, you loosen up some of those things along the way. And it is okay to say no to some apps like Snapchat, like TikTok, and I don't know what the next one is going to be in the next few years. But yes, you're going to get some pushback, but your kids will see over time, if your relationship is close to them, if you are good at keeping a strong relationship, they will see how you love them and how you value them. And there is some temptation, like I said earlier, of them going into those worlds once they get out of your house. But I will tell you from experience, their exploration once they get out of the house is much, much less than if you allow them to explore all of that from day one, from age 6 or 8 or 10, and then it just has to get more and more and more extreme as they grow up. Plus, they get addicted and they get consumed by that, and it hurts their grades, it hurts their relationships, it hurts all kinds of things. Yes, it pays to protect your kids from pornography, from obscene language, from violence on their smartphone. And we even watch their texts. And I have to tell you, I struggled with this. Because I spent hours and hours in my room as a kid talking on the phone. My parents had no idea what I was talking about. Obviously, we don't know what they're talking about at school or when they're at a friend's house. But if you have access to their texts, and you just look through those every once in a while, every month or two, you get a chance to bring up topics that you want to remind your students of. You just want to remind your child about being nice to others, not bullying others. Certain pictures, obviously, are not shared, those sort of things. And your students will feel, to some extent, that you've gone into their private world, but as they know ahead of time that you are going to look at those occasionally, it will help them be more guarded with their words, be more appropriate with their words. And in the end, those are roots that will build into their heart, into their life, that will expound even when you're not around, even when you're not watching, even when you're not listening. I saw a study by Common Sense Media, and it shared some interesting things. Their latest information was from 2019, but it said YouTube was the most used social media app among teens, followed then by Instagram and Snapchat. So, you might experience your sons watching people play video games on YouTube. Yep, they do that. Or, crazy trick shots and things like that. They spend hours and hours on YouTube, and much of it is harmless, but some of it is definitely not harmless. TikTok became the fastest growing new app for American teens in 2019. 60% of TikTok users were the age of 16 to 24 years old. Again, TikTok, wow, some really, really inappropriate language, really, really inappropriate dressing of many of the girls on those videos. Something to be aware of. Some other things they said in their article on Common Sense Media: kids are receiving their first phone around the time they enter this stage of human development where peer engagement is critical. I think we are actually hurting our kids' development if they are, especially as younger kids, spending too much time on social media. Also, they said 1 in 3 children have been cyberbullied. Maybe you've experienced that. Maybe you've heard of friends, kids being cyberbullied. You need to be aware of that. Number 3, only half of parents with kids ages 5 to 15 use parental controls. That is horrible. That is horrible. Do not say, oh, my boy's going to find the pornography some way or the other anyway. No. Make sure you have parental controls on their devices. They will respect you for it. They will appreciate that you are helping protect them. You are helping their future marriage, their future spouse. Ultimately, you are helping them stay out of jail, as many, many people over and over think they're hooking up with a girl on the internet as an adult, as a young adult, and it ends up being the cops, and they end up going to jail because it was somebody under 18. I've heard the stories over and over. Help your kids be aware, and not just boys, girls as well, of protecting them from pornography. Number 4 thing they said was half of people ages 14 to 24 have experienced technological abuse behavior. So this is the harassment. This is people pretending, acting like they're teenagers on social media, but they're actually adults. Definitely things to be aware of. Know who your kids are friends with on their social media platforms. And lastly, many Instagram accounts are fake and could pose a threat to students. So similar, where they're saying they are adults that are posing as teenagers, and very dangerous to allow them to meet up with someone they have never met before, that supposedly they met on the internet or on social media, and they have a cute picture. Very dangerous. Do not let them do that. So just some tips, some encouragement around social media. In leading your children well, guard their social media use. Number 2, in leading your children well, your kids will follow what's important to you. As long as you keep that relationship strong, as long as you keep the relationship tight between your kids, they will follow what's important to you. Obviously, as they get older, they make their own decisions, especially once they get into college and young adult. Certainly they may turn or waver from things that are important to you, but don't be shy in portraying and instilling what's important to you. Just a few examples right here. So if you're an iPhone family, Your kids are iPhone kids. If you're a Droid family, they are Droid kids, right? If you love country music, or if you love rock music, or if you love Christian music, they follow those things. That gets embedded into who they are, and it's a bedrock of their foundation. So let's think about more important things like eating habits. You know, if they see you eating poorly, if you do a lot of eating poorly in your family, they're going to do the same thing. And honestly, I have to admit, I did not do the best in a specific area with this, and that is eating ice cream. I have been addicted to eating ice cream virtually every night since about 6th grade. I waned a little bit, and I pulled back a little bit about 3 or 4 years ago, but up until then, I virtually had ice cream every single night. So guess what? At least two out of my three kids love ice cream and love it all the time. Now, there's nothing wrong with just eating ice cream, right? Unless it hurts your arteries, or unless it makes you gain weight after weight after weight. Here's another just example of your kids will follow what's important to you. Is exercise important to you? Sean and I haven't been that great at living out exercise. Your kids will do what's important to you. Are you an anti-mask family, or you are for mask family? Boy, will kids follow you on that, right? Do you support the government, or do you grumble about the government a lot? Your kids will follow you on that. One parent told me this last week that her preschooler was talking to another one in the neighborhood, and the other one was asking, "Who are your parents voting for?" And she just thought it was so sad that there was arguments about who the parents were voting for at the preschool level. That's probably a little too young to make it clear what you stand for politically, but certainly you want to portray to your kids the importance of following leaders and supporting the government, even when it's not the political party we maybe want in office. That doesn't mean we don't vote the way we want to, or we don't fight to get certain things changed. But we are not a country. We are not a people. We are not a government, a society that reacts in violence, that reacts in overthrowing every single government we don't like. That's what I mean by supporting and following the government. If you swear, your kids are going to swear. If you drink too much, your kids are going to drink too much. Your kids will follow what you do. If you take care of things well, your car, your house, they're going to do the same. Just one example of how this surprised me so much, and how kids follow what their parents believe. A long time ago, when I was a youth minister, one of the teenagers was grumbling because this new gas station was going in near the church and in the neighborhood the church was in. And I was like, why do you care that a new gas station is coming in? And she said, well, my dad doesn't want a bunch of businesses in this neighborhood. He likes it just houses and families. And so that's why I don't like it. I thought, that is so funny, following dad's lead. Whatever is important to mom and dad is important to your kids. And this kid was like 17 years old, following mom and dad. Psalm 127, verse 3 and 4 says this: "Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. They are like arrows in the hand of a warrior, are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them." So God wants you to point the arrows, your children, and point them in the right direction and lead them to the way that honors him. So what did you adopt from your parents? What did you receive from them that was important? Some things maybe you received were great. Some things maybe weren't so great. You know, I received from my parents, Chevy cars are the best cars. Church is important. All the ice cream you want is fine. They kind of allowed me to do that at home. Family is very important. And so I inherited some of those things. You know, what about my kids? What have I handed off to them? As I said, I kind of regret that I didn't portray a stronger push on exercise, a stronger push on not having a nighttime snack of ice cream. I actually just got into a new exercise program that I'm really excited about. So I'm changing, I'm getting better. You know, some good things. My kids continue to follow, as two of them are now in college, and that's loving Jesus, reading their Bible, going to church. Music is a huge part of our family, and those are some great things that have been handed down. So what do you want to pass on to your kids? And what do you not want to pass on to your kids? Maybe you just write those things down. It doesn't have to take long. It could be a 5-minute activity with you and your wife. 5 things we definitely need to model better or speak for in a better way. And maybe 3 or 4 things that maybe you're doing now that you really don't want your kids to echo and follow through on. So number 2 in leading your children well is your kids will follow what's important to you, whether that's good or bad. They will follow that in many, many ways. And so think about what you're portraying as important. The last point in leading your family well is your kids are not just your wife's responsibility, no matter the age. I think in our society, we've gotten a lot better at this than 100 years ago or 200 years ago. I think fathers play a much more significant role than maybe they used to, just being the breadwinner and come home and they were just about work and providing all the money. But it's important to remember that even as your kids are really, really little, it is not only your wife's responsibility. Ultimately, as the head of the whole household, it's our responsibility of how our kids are being raised, what's going on with them, and how they're behaving. Too many men just want to be their playmate instead of a parent. Don't make your wife do all the disciplining. Don't make your wife do all the leadership of the children. It's on us as well. This doesn't mean your wife is not an active part of the process, but it means the ultimate responsibility is on us as fathers. If your kids are going crazy, it's on you. It's not on your wife to solve. And it's okay to go to your pastor, go to a counselor, go to a trusted friend and say, I need help with this. Whether it's your 2-year-old driving you crazy, your 10-year-old, or your 17-year-old, or your 22-year-old driving you crazy. It's important to go to a trusted friend, a pastor, a counselor, but especially one that's not just going to say, oh yeah, that's bad, or oh yeah, that's hard, but to even tell that person, I want you to speak into my life. I want you to tell me maybe how I need to do this differently. I'm going to give you a clear picture of what's going on and why I think it's going on, but allow them and encourage them to speak into your life and encourage them to tweak things that are going on for you. I remember when my oldest was going through some really, really tough times, I called up a really close friend and I just vented and I shared what was going on. And, he encouraged me to do some good next steps that were really, really helpful. Don't be shy to reach out to another guy and talk to them about these issues. This is critical in both the New Testament and the Old Testament, that the father is key in raising the children. That the father is about not just spiritual maturity, but success in life as well. Moses told the men in leadership over Israel to teach their children, when you sit down in your house, when you walk by the way on the road, when your life is down, and when you lie down and when you rise up. Deuteronomy 6:7. So whatever you're doing, right, we're leading our kids, we're modeling to our kids, we're helping them gain responsibility and gain skills. Later in the New Testament, when the issue of child rearing came up in the early church, St. Paul directed his message specifically to men. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and the instruction of the Lord. I think Paul knew that men blow their tops often and maybe have less patience than moms. Some moms struggle with this as well, but Paul says, do not exasperate your children. And he wants us to be gentle with them. He wants us to lead them, but he wants us to discipline them as well. It's not only the mom's job. If your kids are floundering, if they're rebelling, if they're falling apart, there's many reasons it's happening. They might be struggling with depression. They might be experiencing bullying. They might be struggling if there's struggles at home between you and your spouse. There's a lot of different reasons, nutritional reasons, ADHD, all kinds of things that may be going on. But don't just let it go. Make sure you are involved and get help. Kids are so important. They're so valuable, and do everything you can. Many of you know that who go to my church that my oldest daughter was cutting in her late high school years, and she was dealing with a lot of emotion, a lot of internal struggles, and some tension with our limits. Although I think she appreciates, I know she would say she appreciates those a lot more now, and actually wishes we probably would have been even more strict on some of her social media use. But when we found out she was cutting, which is something many kids do when they're stressed, when they're depressed, we went all out. We talked to a doctor about medication. We talked to counselors. We didn't just dance around this and say, oh, it'll pass. No, we hit it head on. And that is very, very important. Do all you can. Get her in groups that, she's happy with, and good friends that affirm her. If they need medication, they need medication to handle their emotions. If they need a counselor, they need a counselor. It might even just be a good friend that they can talk to and share real life with. So 3 tips today on leading your family well. I hope this was super helpful for you. I really loved putting this together. Some action steps for today. Again, maybe you spell out 3 or 4 things you really want to pass on to your kids, and 2 or 3 things maybe that you're doing now that you don't want to pass on. Some social media things you might need to step forward in raising the parental controls on your kids' devices. And then, so guarding their social media, your kids will follow what is important to you. And lastly, your kids are not just your wife's responsibility, but yours as well. I would love for you to email me at rocksolidmen@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. Send me a message on our Facebook page. And you know what? You could really do that. I would absolutely be so indebted and thankful to you for is if you would hit the share button right now and send this to a friend through text or through email and say, this was a great episode, or maybe one of your other episodes, one of my other episodes that you just loved. I encourage you to share it with somebody specific and tell them you really appreciated the episode. God bless. We will see you next time for our last episode of How to Lead Your Family Well.